number one source, Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 393. Happy to be back again. Got a great guest the next 2 weeks. Dan Bliss of Front Row Card Show, putting on great shows coming across the U.S. and a lot of big cities. And this guy knows how to put on a show. And if you've been to a Front Row show, I'm sure you are well aware of that. So, going to cut it up with Dan. He's a busy guy, but he made some time for us the next 2 weeks. You'll hear from him. But as always, we have to thank our incredible sponsors from Sports Collectors Digest, SGC, Upper Deck, Card Ladder, CTCA, the Certified Trading Card Association, and Iron Sports Cards. And happy to be affiliated with all those fine companies and services and organizations. So, with them, we're able to produce these shows and get this content out there. So, Dan Bliss, Front Row Card Show, and we're gonna learn a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff you may know, like I do, and we're gonna learn a few things along the way as well. So let's get this show going. All right, real happy to have the next gentleman on the Sports Card Nation guest line. He is a huge show promoter, does some of the biggest shows that the hobby has in the country. And, I was mentioning to him before we went live here, something I did for a year, not on the scale that this gentleman does, but by doing it for the year, I kind of know what entails. And as a dealer still to this day, I definitely know kind of what goes into it. But glad to get to finally talk to him. Dan Bliss from the Front Row Card Show. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, John.
So let's start before we get into shows. And I kind of told you my thoughts on what I think about them and how important they are to the lifeblood of the hobby. For you, when did the hobby start? When did it all get going for you?
Well, like a lot of people, it started when I was a kid. Got into sports cards with some friends. We'd go pick out packs of cards. We'd go to a flea market and buy and sell cards. And there was a guy that was a coin shop. There's a permanent shop in the flea market, and he always had cards. And he actually would have Beckett magazines. So we'd pick up a Beckett magazine and some packs of cards, and then we'd also go to the pharmacy and get some packs of cards there too. So just like a lot of people, it started off as a kid, just buying and selling. For us, it was baseball and football cards. We, got into both of those pretty aggressively. I didn't get into basketball till a little bit later.
Yeah. So like I said to you before we record, like, to me, nothing beats, right, an in-person transaction. I'm a show dealer. You set up as well. You told me, and it's even more, and I'm sure you'll agree, Dan, right? Dollars and cents are fine and nice, right? But, right, it's that interaction, right? You're being in that same fraternity in a room, whether it's a big room, a small room of like-minded folks that share the same hobby you do. And you can't get that online. And I know online's here to stay. But I'm glad I kind of started my hobby started in 79. So the internet was not even a thought yet, but I'm so glad I kind of did. Not that I wish I was a little younger still, but because I got used to, like, everything was in person, and so that doesn't get lost on me, and I get they coexist, but again, those in person transactions, and not even transactions, but even just conversations and being in the room with fellow collectors and dealers. You can't overemphasize that. Kind of your thoughts when you hear me talk about that.
Well, obviously, I'm on board with that. You know, the in-person experience is just unlike anything else. It's not just about buying and selling. It's about the conversations. It's about sharing stories. It's about connecting. It's about reminiscing. Um, Sharing stories of your favorite players. Sharing stories about collecting with your dad or your friends, or whatever it might be. And talking about the cards that got away. Or talking about the cards that you sold and you shouldn't have, and the ones that you bought and you shouldn't have. So we've all got those stories and just those experiences, and just reminiscing in that way is that's a big part of the hobby, I think, and that's something you can really only experience at a show.
Yeah, no doubt. And so let me ask you this: what came first for you, like promoting shows or setting up, or were they at the same?
Well, setting up, of course. It started for me setting up at a flea market. The flea market I told you I went to as a kid. At some point, when I turned 16 and I was old enough to drive, I had a beater car, and I would literally go sell at the flea market. Now, this is outdoors, right?
Yeah.
So obviously it didn't happen if it's raining. But also you had to deal with the sun, like it would bleach cards. So if you're not careful about putting your cards out when it's a sunny day, your cards literally will fade. So you got to be mindful of all that stuff. So but I was a kid. I didn't have any other options. And I would go sell at the flea market. And then eventually I got to the point of realizing that, hey, maybe I could go get a table at a show. And then I started becoming a vendor at other shows.
Yeah, that's cool. So how many years before you said, hey, I can do these, I can put on these? And what was it? What was the motivation? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it happened fairly quickly because my first show that I put on, I was a sophomore in college. So I was 19. And what happened is a buddy and I got him into collecting. And I went to Ohio State and I got my friend into collecting, and then we would both go to shows and be a vendor at shows, and we would do that. And then at some point we decided to organize our own show, and it was just a couple of college knuckleheads is all it was. So we organized a show, and then it went well. And then we grew from there, and we did some shows together. And then this is in Columbus, Ohio. And then I started organizing shows up in Cleveland, Ohio at the same time. So even while I was in college, I was organizing shows in Cleveland and Columbus. And but these were small shows. Like I think our biggest show combined was 80 tables, maybe 90 tables at the most. But it seems to me 80 tables might have been our biggest. And most of the shows were in the 50 table range.
Did you know then, Dan, hey, this is something I want to grow and expand upon? And obviously we're starting here, but I see this as a bigger thing, or were you just sort of flying by the seat of your pants, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. But did you know?
No, not at the time. At the time, I was just trying to pay my way through school,
Yeah.
And that's really all it was. It was just a source of income. My freshman year, I worked as a bus boy at a hotel, and that's the last time I had a job. And but after that, I was buying and selling. I was still, even when I was doing that, I was still buying and selling cards. But
yeah,
but then I started organizing shows, and then I was it was just I didn't have any big vision. I wish I could say that I did, but I didn't. So in fact, after I graduated college, I got out of the hobby, and one of my big regrets, my big regrets, is I had given my mom some of my best cards and said, she has a safety deposit box. And I said, put these in the safety deposit box and leave them alone for me. And I gave her a Clemente rookie, a Nolan Ryan rookie, a George Brett rookie, some 60s mantles, and told her to put them away. And sure enough, after I graduated college, and then I was kind of struggling to get by, and I'd stopped doing shows. So I was now I'm just bleeding, and went and asked her if she could get them out of the vault. And I ended up selling them, and I regret that deeply. I wish I still had those.
Yeah, I think I think you ask anyone in the hobby, maybe a different version, but we all have that
Of
story. I wish
course,
I would have
of
done that,
course.
or I wish I wouldn't have done that. Right, works
That's right. That's
both
right.
ways, and if we can still chuckle at it a little bit, and then I guess it's okay. So you can
It's
always
all
rebuild,
it's
right?
all good. It's all good.
Yeah. So I mean, you're doing shows, and if I leave a city off, it's completely unintentional. Portland, Phoenix, Salt Lake City, Tacoma, Vegas, Pasadena, San Diego. That's it's hard enough to do even like a local show, like here, like we have in
Well,
Syracuse,
we
which are
also
120.
expanded,
Yeah,
John.
go
We
ahead.
also expanded east. We did a show in March in Atlanta. So we
There
did
you
an
go.
East Coast show, and then we have Atlanta and Orlando both in November.
Yep. When you're considering a new city for you to put on a show, what kind of factors do you take into account, like before you decide, like, hey, let's do this?
Well, first of all, it's got to be a sizable market. We're not going to go into a small city. Generally speaking, we want to be in major league cities that have major league sports. And we also take a look at whether or not that market is fully served by the shows in town. Like, are there good shows there? And is there room to improve on what's currently offered? If there's already a lot of shows in the city, and if they're strong shows, we'll be like, well, who are we serving? So we want to go to places that we feel like we're helping the community, we're helping the vendors that live there, we're helping the collectors that live there to have a great place to go to buy and sell cards. So it's a combination of market as well as whether or not the market is being served.
Yeah, makes sense. And you know, there's been as you well know, I'm preaching to the choir here, right? We've seen in the last few years, post COVID, with the the expansion of the hobby, if you will, we've seen a lot more shows, right? We've seen more quantity of shows, and we've also seen more qualities of shows, yours included. I always ask, this is always like a topic that will come up, whether I'm a guest on another podcast or a guest on this podcast. It always, I don't want to say always, but it does come up from time to time when it comes to shows. Like, can there be a point of overset? Can we have too many shows? And obviously, the consumer is going to probably dictate that more than anyone else by attendance. But as a promoter of shows, like, how would you answer that question? Can we get to an oversaturation?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's going to really come down to the customers deciding. And even though the market's really hot right now, not all shows are doing incredibly well. So, there's some that are doing really, really well, and some that aren't doing well at all, and maybe they're not even around anymore. So it's just like anything else. I mean, I think cream rises to the top. So the best shows will flourish and the struggling shows won't. And there's a point of saturation, certainly, in anything. There can be a point where there's too much. And
Yeah,
and that's part of how we decide where we're going. We're going to go to
yeah,
places where we feel, like I said, that it's at least underserved in some way. And it maybe it's not underserved in quantity, but if we feel the market's underserved in quality, then that might still be a good market for us.
yeah. No doubt. And as someone who's been on both sides of the table, right, as a promoter for a very small stretch of time, and as when it sets up at those now,
Sure.
right? It's especially the bigger shows, right? It's almost impossible to please everyone, right? It's such a balancing act, and I know, and obviously, and a lot of people, but there's some people don't realize all the details and all the stuff, that it's not just you unlock the doors and come on in, right? A lot of work that goes into these shows, where someone's going to be. They're not doing this rotation to show something, but they're going to be back in their normal spot. So this guy, this person's going to be here this show, but maybe not next show. And you got all those different personalities, and some people are very hard to please, as we know. Talk about, for those that maybe don't grasp that concept, just the logistics sometimes of putting on a show. Everyone thinks, a lot of people who come to the show don't realize all that behind the scenes stuff.
Well, yeah, it can be overwhelming. Like, people don't realize, our average show is very big, John. Our average show is 540 tables. That's our average show. And we're doing 2 a month. So with all the shows that we have coming up, in fact, later this month, we're going to have a show 3 consecutive weeks. We'll have a show starting end of June and into July, 3 consecutive weeks. And then we get a little break when, late July, obviously the Nationals coming. And so we take a little time off ourselves and recover. And then we don't have another show till mid-August. But we just had a staff meeting today. It took 2.5 hours with a full team going through all the different details that we've got to do for the next, 4 or 5 shows coming up. And the details for every show, there's just a long list of coordination between, security, tables, like dealing with fire marshals, the police, setting up like the coordination of load in. What are the details about that? Then obviously we have all of our advertising, marketing, vendor badges, vendor signs, custom signage, prizes, swag bags, sponsors, grading companies. There's the list just goes on. And then you multiply the number of different communications we have with the dealers. And when you've got 500 tables, I mean, you do the math on that. If we have a 600 table show and we have a 1-minute conversation with every dealer, it takes 10 hours. 10 hours to have a 1-minute conversation with everybody.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So if you do the math on how hard it is for all those little things, or even table signs, if it takes a minute for you to make a table sign, it takes 10 hours to do all of them. So the hours it takes to deal with all the different nuances and details for every show.
You are listening to the Sports Card Nation podcast. We'll be right back after this break.
Iron Sports Cards is your #1 source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group or on the web at ironsportscards.com, or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.
We are back.
Back when I was young and I was doing 50 table shows, my mom was taking the phone calls from the dealers and she'd write them down on a notepad stapled to a flyer. And that was it, and then I handled the advertising, and, it was a lot easier. But I don't know, when you take it up a notch, it's quite a lot of work, and you've got to have a good, reliable team to do it.
Yeah, that's a good segue into my next question too, Dan. Like, so obviously, you spearhead this thing, but how many people on staff? I know your wife's instrumental in getting a lot of things done, but overall, kind of talk about, all the gears that need to work together. Like, how big of a staff are you?
We've got a full-time staff of 6. We've got a 2,400 square foot office. We've also got storage facilities in 3 different cities, and we've got part-time team. Some of them are travel, some of them are just local. Typically about 10 to 12 in each city. Plus we hire local security, plus we hire police, plus we have set up and tear down people. So it's, there's a lot.
Yeah. And I one of the reasons I love asking these questions, Dan, is because I don't think people realize all the different all the tentacles to this, right? Insurance, and you mentioned like fire marshals and security and police, and they, again, a lot of people think you get the dealers to set up and you open the doors and then when the show's over, you lock up and turn the lights out. And obviously,
No,
it's way more than that.
And we've even got cleaning crews. We got to have cleaning crews,
Yeah.
and then we have tablecloths, and then those have to be laundered. I mean, there's so many different details that people don't realize. But you know what? Here's the beauty, John, is that if we do it right, it feels easy. It feels easy. If the dealers they get vendor instructions, and then they got to show up. They check in, they go to their table, they have a great experience. It's packed, all the way to the end on both days of a show. They have a fantastic experience. And some people make a living buying and selling cards at our shows. And they travel with us. Some of them travel with us all over the country. And if it's easy for them, it's funny, John. Sometimes I even think I would love to just be a vendor at Front Row. And then I could just show up, set up and do my thing and then go home. And, it'd be so much easier. Like I'm in a lot of ways, I'm jealous of our vendors.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. Well, it's probably why I only did promotion for like a year and just said, I'm just going to set up and do the easier part of the two.
It is hard to find good shows, though, John. It's hard to find good shows that have big crowds. I mean, if you've ever bought and sold cards, that we've all been vendors at shows where we're twiddling our thumbs half the day. And there's no customers, and you maybe bring some extra cards. You start sorting through them, to keep yourself busy. But it's much better when you have people there, even if they're not buying from you. Even if, let's say, maybe your inventory is not good right now because you've sold too much, or you're waiting for stuff to come back from grading. If you're at least engaging with other collectors, that's part of the fun, right? Talking to other people about cards. Yeah,
and you could be laying down some of the tracks for a future transaction, one way or the other, whether it's a purchase or a sale. So I always say some of the best shows, I don't always measure a show I set up at just solely on dollar signs, right? It's all that other stuff taken into account.
Yeah, you never know what your sales are going to be because and you never know what buying opportunities you're going to get, right? So both buying and selling, it's so random. Sometimes show is packed to the walls and you don't do as well. And maybe it's because your inventory is not good, or maybe it's just the randomness of who came in the door. And then buying opportunities, you never know what you're going to get. Sometimes, you never know when something's going to walk in the door.
That's some of the fun, Dan, is not knowing, right? It's just
that's true.
Anticipation and, hey, what's this show going to be like? What is, what kind of cards I'm going to look at that are for sale? Then am I going to we'll be able to come to a, consummated deal. So it's all that anticipation and, suspense that I enjoy that even in my advanced age here. I did my first show as go ahead.
If you're in the hobby, we all love, whether you're just an attendee or you're a vendor, the serendipity, the randomness. You don't know what you're going to see today. And that I think is a big part of the fun of being in the hobby. But I will say, John, I take it very seriously as a promoter, the role of promotion. I feel that when someone books a table at a Front Row card show, that my job is to give them a table, 2 chairs, a tablecloth, and a crowd, and that's my job. So I work my butt off to bring a big crowd, so that every vendor, number one, has fun, because it's fun to be at a busy show. And number 2, has at least an opportunity to have a great weekend. And that's all I can do. I can't make people buy from you. I can't make people sell things to you. But I can fill the room with collectors, and then the rest is up to you.
Yeah, and it's nice hearing you say that. Here's where I'm going with this too, Dan. Is I always feel like there's 2 type of promoters, right? Maybe 3. Maybe one fits sort of in the middle. But there's someone like yourself, let's say, who really cares about the show they're putting on and wants it to be the best possible for the dealers who are, paying for that space, right? Like you said, I can't guarantee you sales or buys, but I want you to have the opportunity with with people through the door, right?
That's right.
And that's nice to hear, because I think there's another type of promoter that it's just quantity over. It's just like, hey, the more shows I do, the more tables I can sell, the more money goes in my pocket. It's sort of one-sided, one-dimensional, if you will. And I think that kind of comes along with the explosion of the hobby is, just like we see like people who sell cards kind of get in it for the quick buck. I think that, I don't think we talk about it often enough. I think there's people who get into show promotion for just the dollars of it and not caring about their clientele or their customers too, which are not even, like you said, not only the dealers, but the people coming through the door as well.
Right. I care about both of them because I'm a collector too. I love going to shows, I really do. And so I look at it through both lenses. I look at it through the attendees lens, and then I look at it through the vendor's lens. Like, what kind of a show would I want to be buying and selling at? What kind of a show do I want to be at? And, John, we undersell tables at all of our shows. Every one of our shows, we can sell more tables. Every show we do is sold out. And every show we do, we could easily sell more tables. And in many cases, we have room to sell more tables, John.
Yeah.
We have room to sell more, and we choose not to because we don't want to dilute the customers for our vendors. So we want to make sure our vendors have a good experience.
Yeah. How many times you see, and I won't mention it to be nice about it, right? I did a show where the promoter just added a bunch more tables, and the walkways were like this wide, like people back to back couldn't even really do that. It was almost, I hate to use
John,
the term,
we don't do that either. Our vendors,
our
vendors always have room, and our aisles, John, for customers are always 9 to 12 feet for our aisles. We never do you can't, I've been to shows where you put your hands out, you can put your hands out and touch both tables easily on both sides. You can put flat palms on both tables, and I'm not that tall.
Yeah.
And we don't do that.
No, and that's good to hear. But I've set up at a show that was like that. It was just a nightmare. A lot of people complaining, and actually probably more customers than even the vendors, because it was hard to get to a table. It was like boxing out in a basketball game. So it's nice to hear, and that works both ways, right? That's for the customer's comforts as well, and then obviously you got fire codes and that, all that stuff. You mentioned
some places don't care about fire codes. They don't.
We could do a whole episode on
or some places don't care about aisle widths. The only thing they care about is don't block the exits. And they don't care about the aisles. And I don't care what the fire marshal tells me what I'm allowed to do. I'm always going to have wide aisles.
Yeah. No, and I'm sure your vendors and appreciate that, and the customers. Sure. So, you mentioned police and security. It's not a new phenomenon, right? But it's become more of a focal point, right? With thefts at shows. We know what happened in Dallas with allegedly $1 million worth of cards being taken. That can ruin, as a dealer yourself and myself, right? Getting something taken can be a good day a very bad day. How have you sort of evolved with sort of that becoming more, unfortunately, more of a commonplace? It's not new, but I think it's because of the values of some of the stuff, as you well know, right?
Yeah.
It's become more prevalent, I guess, maybe the better word.
Well, we take it very, very seriously. Like the Dallas event, I mean, we know Ashish. I know Ashish, and I know that happened to him. I've seen video of that incident. That occurred after the show ended, and people were still in the room that didn't have badges. So we were really strict on getting customers out after the show ends. Yeah. We're polite about it, but they got to go. And so we make sure that before the show and after the show, there's nobody in the room that doesn't have a vendor badge. In addition to that, we also check IDs of everybody, all the vendors. That we check their IDs. So we know they are who they are. We don't allow subletting. We don't allow vendors to sublet their tables because, and this applies to multiple things. If a vendor books a table And John, people want to sublet tables all the time at our
Yeah.
shows because our shows are sold out. Some people can't get in, and then they'll offer someone a bunch of money to buy their tables. So there's a
Yeah.
secondary market for tables at our shows, and we don't tolerate it. So what happens is that we don't allow subletting, and the main reason we don't do that is, John, for example, if you booked a table at our show, you would need to show your ID to come when you check in, and then we give you your vendor badge. Then you go to your table. Well, if you would sublet your table, and a lot of promoters do, and that's their choice, okay? So I'm not going to criticize or point out anybody. But if someone sublets your table, John, and the promoter doesn't even know that person's name, they don't have their phone number, they don't have their email, they don't know who that is. Well, if something happens there, and maybe that vendor steals from somebody, or they're selling fake cards or fake slabs, or resealed packs, there's no ramifications because nobody knows who they are. So we are certainly, in our view, the most careful in the hobby when it comes to security among our vendors, in addition to making sure that the attendees are in the room when they should be, out of the room when they should be, and behaving when they're there, between the level of what we spend on security and also uniformed police officers at our shows, at every show. I don't think anybody takes security as serious as we do.
Yep. No, it's good to hear, and some great insights from a guy who puts on these huge shows, right? And what an endeavor, right? And like he says, to go off smoothly, right? It's not as easy as it looks. And, I put on small shows back in the day. He's doing 500 tables plus, multiple times, either a month or a year. He's doing them in different cities. A lot of gears turning. I love the dichotomy of that, and picking his brain, and seeing how the engine goes forward, right? And we're not done with Dan. He's coming back for part 2 of our conversation. Will be on the next episode. So, hopefully you're looking forward to that, as I am. And, we'll have, like I said, we'll have Dan back too, as he grows his franchise. So, and he's doing a great job. I've heard nothing but positive stuff about what he does. So, glad to have him on, and he'll be back next week. All right, now let's hear from our Hobbies the People announcer, some closing thoughts, and wrap up this week's episode.
Time for our Hobby is the People announcer of the week.
Hello, we are
Grant,
Rory,
Annie,
and we are
Lakeside Collectibles.
Please remember,
The hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People announcer of the week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.
Say goodnight, Kane.